Hello again, and welcome to this week's edition of your Wheel and Anchor weekly newsletter. Well, our poll last week was all about group travel and soliciting your opinion as to what you think doesn't work well about group travel. And I must say we got quite an overwhelming response to this question, which to me just shows how much interest people have in a group travel experience that is not sort of stereotypical like you hear about with big groups and buses and people being herded around like cats. And of course, that is exactly the kind of difference that we're trying to make here at Wheel and Anchor. Some of the things that people said, I kind of thought I would summarize it into a couple of different categories, but I think the overwhelming complaint that people have about traveling with groups is when you have people that show up late for the coach, or show up late for meal times, or any time when everybody has to sort of go someplace at the same time. Waiting for those latecomers has to be one of the top complaints that people have. In a similar note, generally there were a lot of comments about people who felt that others were perhaps not as respectful to their fellow travelers as they might otherwise be. How do we resolve this? Well, I think it's a good question, and what we came up with in our strategy meeting this week is that we're going to try implementing a code of conduct. And I know that a lot of other communities or clubs, like golf clubs or tennis clubs or ski clubs or that kind of thing, have exactly this kind of document, which sort of sets out the guidelines, the rules by which we conduct ourselves when we're all together in a common environment. And so I think that the idea behind this is that we do all enjoy each other's company for the most part when we're traveling together, and by sort of setting out some guidelines that just sort of tell us what the best way is to interact and to as I say, have respect for our fellow members, could perhaps go a long way to having a more pleasant travel experience while with the group. Of course, there's a number of other factors that were mentioned. For example, sort of logistical issues, like the number one being not having enough time or not having enough flexibility in the itinerary. And of course, that's very common. If you look at a lot of traditional tour group itineraries, you find that you get shuffled around really every single day. There's a full program. You hardly have any other time on your own. And this comes back to us, the tour organizers. And we've taken that kind of feedback into account, and already our itineraries are a bit different from most, because I'm a firm believer in incorporating at least a full day or a couple of half days at any of the more significant stops along the way, so that you do have time to do something that's outside the formalized aspect of the program. Another complaint, of course, was all about having those typical group meals where you get like busloads of people all stuffed into a dining hall, eating clearly mass-produced type cuisine. And of course, that's the kind of experience we also like to avoid. That's up to us to try to ensure that as much as possible we dine out in places that are not your typical tour group type venues. Not always easy, but certainly because we try to focus on smaller groups, it enables us to try to make reservations at venues that will be a little bit more traditional with locals, and not that classic tour group experience. It's part of the reason as well why I don't believe including 3 meals a day on all of our itineraries, because I think that when you're venturing out into these wonderful places around the world, often you pass by restaurants and cafes and places that you just want to try out, and of course in a usual tour group itinerary that's often just not possible. In fact, a great comment that one of our members made was trying to create individualized experiences with group support. I think it's a great concept. Certainly there is quite a bit to the actual execution of that, but I think it's a mantra that we're certainly going to look into as we create further programs. So just a couple of items of note coming up this week. We have on Tuesday our long stay webinar, where we're going to talk a little bit about some of the long stay destinations we're considering and the types of things that you would like to see included in such a program. We're going to describe a little bit about the destinations we're thinking about, what's it like to travel there, what's it like to spend a longer period of time. So join us for that on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 28th of July at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and on Thursday, the 30th of July at 11 o'clock, we'll be having our webinar about our newest program, Yachting the Turkish Mediterranean, aboard these wonderful goulets that I've managed to get a hold of for October of next year. So find out about that at our upcoming webinar on July 30th at 11 a.m. Well, it's starting to rain here in Thailand, so I got to dash inside. Look forward to catching up with you again next week.